Hey everybody, Knothead again. I was considering going live today, but I decided not to. After I had a bit of an internet outage earlier. Nothing huge. I don't know what's going on, but anyway. So, I know yesterday I started talking about things that you do before you prep, before you go to a big race. And I know I left a comment in the video about shocks, and I decided I'd just go ahead and record another video on that, and I'll go ahead and post that today as well. Shocks. Like I said, I try to prepare ahead of time for the entire weekend. That way I don't have to touch my shocks. And this weekend, it's looking to be about similar, so I'm not going to have to necessarily change the weight of my oil, but I need to service my shocks. I need to do a complete breakdown on my shocks and get them clean with brand new oil. Because frankly, I haven't done it in a while. And it's showing because I can't get to the scrub screw on here. While I'm also doing that, I know I mentioned yesterday I was going to talk about some of my favorite tools, and luckily today I get to use a couple of them, which is awesome. So yesterday I talked about the DeWalt driver. Today you'll be seeing me use my Techno shock tool and my Techno wheel nut driver, which are amongst two of my favorite tools. Part of the reason why, I don't remember if I did it in another video or not, the Techno wheel nut tool is where I'll start. I learned it does a few things. I think I learned this one from Bornhorst, one of Joe Bornhorst's videos, is it'll hold a differential. In the wheel nut hole, you can just stick your differential in there and stand it up if you don't have a pit stand or anything with a spot that you can put it in. So it fits in there and it fills a purpose. But what it does for today's tool is it has this slot in the top of it that you can fit on top of your shock cap and twist it off. So it gives that functionality in there. Great. While I'm at it, hot tip, if you have an empty plastic bottle, your shock will fit right on top of it, and you can use that water bottle to drain your shock out. The other tool, like I said, to talk about real quick, is the Techno shock tool. And it's probably one of the single best RC investments I've ever done. It's got a 17 millimeter hex, it's got a 12 millimeter hex, and it's got your 3.0 and your 4.0 millimeter shock shaft holders on there. So it'll work for 10 scale and it will work for 8 scale. But what it has that nobody else has, is it has the ball links in and out. So you can pop your ball links in with it and you can pop your ball links out with it. What I love about it, especially today doing a shock rebuild, is if you didn't see me working with it earlier, is you can use it to hold your shock body in concert with the Techno wheel nut wrench, and either crank that shock cap down so it doesn't come off, or crank off that shock cap that you did crank on. So it provides a lot of utility, much like the wheel nut wrench. But talking about shock prep and weights, there's a lot of schools of thought. I was talking to Jared Wiggins at Lone Star Challenge, and he told me that he doesn't stock anything in his toolbox in the quarters for weights. So what I'm talking about in quarters is like 525, 575. Those call them third weights, I guess. or quarter weights is better. Quarter weights. He only does it in 50s. I'm trying to use the 12 millimeter hex on his 16 millimeter shock. Genius. So he doesn't change it unless if it's a 50 step. So from like 600 to 650 or 500 to 550. Get the idea on that. And it's just less things to carry around. And honestly, sometimes 25 isn't really that huge of a deal. So it's not really anything to be overly concerned about if it's a 25 weight difference. Which brings up the shock tool, or the shock temp tool that I linked yesterday. I calculated the temperature, which the high is expected to be mid 60s, and the low, and supposedly the morning, maybe the evening, depending on how Shaw's goes, is supposed to be in the 40s. So it's going to be anywhere between like something weird like 617 CST, which nobody makes, and mid 500s, quarter 500s, 525 or something weird like that for the low. I'm not planning for that weird low because that's probably just going to be in the morning on my way up. I'm planning for what would be the entire day, and I don't think 575 will be good. So I'm just going to stay at 600, which is where I had my car set at for Lone Star Challenge. It's been that way for a while, actually, since I went to the Wiggins Pistons. So I'm staying at 600 CST in my shocks. Which, just like in my differentials, I use the PTRC oil. Again, I think it's a great value. It's $10 for a bottle, and you get a significant amount of fills. I think I'm on a fresh bottle, and I've done one shock rebuild. So that small part of the shock body is perfect for the shock tool. Just stick that in there and just wheel the shock body right off. And so here what I'm doing when I break my shock down is I'm looking at all the Delrin inserts. Just making sure those guys are still good. I'm checking the O-rings, making sure they're still good. I'm looking for warped abnormalities on the Delrin inserts, which I'm not seeing right now, which is good. And I'm just trying to get everything wiped down and clean. And just like yesterday when I do wipe downs, I'm talking about my diffs, I'll wipe everything down with just a microfiber towel. And I just break it all down, clean it off. And then for my shock builds, if you haven't seen any of my setup sheets, I use the emulsion builds. I want to try the bladder, but I don't want to also have a set of shocks just for Shaws and loose dirt, because my understanding is you don't want to use a bladder on a loose track. Emulsion build is better at a loose track, and I don't want to have to rebuild my shock just to go to Indy, so I just run emulsion 99% of the time, 999.999 repeating. I never change. I just run emulsion. But I'm not gonna go through the filling and building part. There's plenty of videos out there. I just wanted to talk real quick about prepping and cleaning and things like that. So I'm going to talk about one last thing, and then I'm going to turn the camera off and do work. And that's how I seal the rubber O-rings, and in the bottom of the making it easier to adjust the bottom of the shock shaft if you need to. And it's just like yesterday. Shock body's good. The shock shaft and piston move freely in the shock body, so I don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to put all the plastic back in. That first plastic piece goes in. And just like on the differentials, I'm going to use the red and tacky or the grease from the Lucas. I just have the red and tacky readily available. I'm going to put some on the plastic Delrin piece. I'm going to slide this first O-ring in. This next plastic piece. Tap that down. Put some red and tacky on this one. Put this other O-ring in. This last Delrin piece. Screw the bottom of the shock body on. I do not put any grease here. And that's the shock body rebuilt. And then at the bottom of the O-ring, or bottom of the shock shaft, let's see. I am going to use black grease. I don't know where my Lucas is, so I'm just going to use this Techno Kit black grease. I'm going to put a little bit on the end of it. Again, this is basically just the same thing as the Lucas grease. That I would just stick my finger in the tube and wipe some on there. And it's just like building the kit, you put the grease on there so you can get it easily through everything down in there and you don't cause any damage. And in the past, I've wiped that off of the end of the shock shaft, but I'm going to leave it on. I'll go ahead and slide my dirty shock boot back on. It's a step that you don't want to forget. And then I'm going to put the end on the grease, and what this does is it just allows that end to go on a lot easier. And if you need to adjust it, there's grease in there, so it makes it a lot easier there. And then you just want to measure the distance between here and here on both shocks and make sure they're the same so you get the same droop. And there you go. Alright guys, well thanks for again watching again. Let's like and subscribe and share so we can get to that 100 followers, 100 subscribers. I know I looked yesterday, it is definitively 59 unless one added today and I didn't check. But I look forward to seeing everybody at Shaw's this weekend if you're going. If not, I will see you at Indy Series the weekend after that. If you're not going to that, I will see you at some track sometime somewhere. Thanks for tuning in, guys.